And here we are at Davidian's farm at 500 Church Street. The farm is owned by Debbie and David Davidian and Nancy and Ed. We're going to go inside and learn about some of the things that are grown right here in Northborough. And most specifically, of course, we're going to learn about the tomatoes because we're making Sunday sauce. So let's go inside, warm up, and meet up with Nancy. And here we are at Davidian Farms at 500 Church Street, and we're joined by Nancy Davidian, who's going to take us through a little bit of history about the farm, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what is actually grown here right in Northborough, and then get into our tomatoes. So Nancy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Joanna. It's wonderful to have you here with us. And I'd like to tell you a little history of our farm. We started the farm in 1918. That was purchased by my husband's grandfather. And he ran it, and my husband's father, he was born on the farm, and he came into the business with his father. And then my husband and my brother-in-law followed into the business. And now we currently have my husband, my brother-in-law, my son Michael, and my brother-in-law's sons DJ and Matthew currently in the business. So we do have two generations. We unfortunately lost Eddie's father last year. So we were three generations for many, many years. And we do have approximately 250 acres of farm, but of course we do not farm all of it.
If we were to make our own sauce and have them be a locally grown tomato, when would we start to see the real abundance of the crop at the farm stand?
Well, the real crop comes in abundantly the month of August to the first part of September. And after that, especially this year, because we had a terrible drought this year, they weren't, the plants weren't as healthy as they should be. So the crop really started subsiding towards the middle part of September. But if you're going to do canning, I would definitely do it sometime in August.
Yeah, late August, early September would be a good time.
Right.
So right here today we have a few different varieties.
That's right.
If I was to come in here, it looks like I have some of your own larger tomatoes.
That's right.
Some plum tomatoes and some grape tomatoes. If I was to come to you and say, hey Nancy, I'm going to be making some sauce this weekend, which ones would you recommend I grab?
Well, if I could get my hands on a good plum tomato, I definitely would go with that.
Okay.
They have a meatier flesh, they have less seeds, and less water content.
Great.
So they definitely make a much better sauce.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I would try to get some of those.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you for visiting us. It's a pleasure as always.
Hi, and welcome to Hometown Cooking. This is all about feel-good food that you can make right in your own home, but it's also about highlighting some of the local food providers that we have right here in Northborough. This show kind of all came about because my mom, Joanna Sharp, actually came in here to Whitney Place, which this is a beautiful kitchen, and she walked in and said, oh my God, what a perfect place to have a cooking show. And after many conversations and a bunch of other hands that made this possible, this show was born. So I'm very excited to be here and to share a passion that I have with food with the Northborough people, and also just highlight other people in town that made this possible. So there's no better way to start this show than with something that I do pretty much every week, and it's what I call my Sunday sauce, mainly because I make it on Sundays. And it's your basic tomato sauce, but over the years I've kind of tweaked it a little bit. And one of the first things that I really had to find out is the tomatoes. And if you go to the grocery store and you look down the aisle, there's probably, 100 different tomatoes and cans that you can pick from. So the first step was finding the tomato that I wanted to use. And after many trials and tribulations, I landed on Tutti Rosso's crushed tomatoes with little basil. So this recipe is really all about 4 ingredients. Canned tomatoes, we're going to take some diced onions, garlic and olive oil, and thyme. It does take about an hour to cook this from start to finish, but the thyme is what really gives you that flavor that you're going to want. So let's start with the garlic. You go to the grocery store and you get a bulb of garlic and you break it all apart and you get all these beautiful cloves. Well, it's not always the easiest thing to get all those little fine wrappings off the cloves. So one of the things that I've started to do is I actually put my garlic in the microwave for about 5 to 7 seconds, maybe more if you're going to put more cloves in. And it actually starts to loosen up the paper on the outside. So I'm going to do that first and get that going. Actually, I'm going to do 8 seconds. While that's going, I'm going to start my pan, because another really important part is you really do need a warm pan to get a nice caramelization on your onions. So I'm going to put my oil in. For this recipe, we're going to use 2 cans of tomatoes. And for 2 cans of tomatoes, you're probably going to want about 2 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil. So these are just a little warm to the touch, but it does loosen up that paper a little bit. So just chop that outer core off, and hopefully this will work with me. And these will just peel off. And they're just coming right off, which is super easy compared to when you get them all stuck on there and they're really hard to do. You also might have a little blemishes on your garlic, so you could just, clean that up. And you basically are going to end up with about, I think the original recipe called for 2 cloves of garlic. I usually make that about 4 to 8, depending on how finicky I'm feeling. So you're just going to chop this up. And the one thing, you never want anything in the kitchen to intimidate you from cooking. So if you want to do larger chops, you do larger chops. If you want to get a garlic mince at your local gadget store for kitchen stuff, then get one of those. It's whatever's going to get your ingredients into the pan and get you into the kitchen is really the most important thing. So I'm not going to get super fussy with this. Just going to get a nice little chop, and I'll set that aside. So the next ingredient is going to be some onion. I personally like yellow onion. They're a little sweeter. So you're just going to want to clean the outside off. Get that going. And then usually when you peel the onion, I don't know if you found this at home when you're working with it, there's sometimes a very thin little membrane that's on the outside of the onion. And when you go to cut it, it actually can slip. So I do try to remove that as well. And then you're just going to chop that down the middle. And then again, just make cuts that you're comfortable with. If you want to go and watch some videos or take some classes on some chef cuts, then rock it, make it happen. If you just want to get some food on the table for your family, if you want to buy pre-cut onions, do that. Whatever's going to get you to make some home food. So again, we have I think I had about 6 cloves of garlic, 1 yellow onion, and 2, I believe these are 28 ounce, 28 ounce cans of tomatoes. So let's get that into the pan. My pan's all nice and warm. I have my onions back here. And that's what you want to hear. You want to hear when you drop your ingredients in that pan is already ready for it. Because if you're bringing your pan up to temperature with your ingredient, it might take longer to get that nice flavor. So let's let that start to brown up. And let's get started on our second accompaniment for our sauce. Typically when you're making a tomato sauce, what you're usually putting with it is spaghetti and meatballs. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you want to try to incorporate some more vegetables with your sauce, this is one way of doing it. And I don't know if anyone has tried yet, but I'm in love with Zoodles, which is basically spiralized vegetables. And it's all based from this cool little gadget, which is a spiralizer. So you just clean up the zucchini ends. And this literally is so great. It happens so fast. You take your zucchini and you just place it into the spiralizer. And you don't want the zucchini too thick or it won't fit. But it creates these ribbons that really look like spaghetti, except it's like a sixth of the calories from a thing of pasta. And hey, I'm not knocking pasta. I'll eat probably a whole box if I was ready for it. But one zucchini will give you quite a plateful of vegetables, but it's a little different than just having sautéed veggies. So there's your zoodles. And while that's sitting here, and that pan, I can hear it in the back, I'm going to get my garlic in there. You also don't want to put your garlic in your tomato sauce with your onions because the onions are going to cook up quicker. So these are nice and brown. So I'm going to put in some of my minced garlic. And that actually happens pretty quickly. It only takes about 30 seconds to a minute to start to smell that garlic. It's why people love walking into a house and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, somebody's cooking in here because I can smell that garlic. So that's been about 30 seconds. And I'm just going to pour, this is my 2 cans of tomato sauce. Get that in there. Oh, and it's already bubbling up nice. So I'll turn my heat down. And that's it. You just made Sunday sauce. And it's only been about 10 minutes. Well, I lied. You just started your Sunday sauce. It's going to sit here for about an hour on your stove. And it's going to simmer. It's also going to come down in weight, probably about a half of the volume that's in there at the beginning. When you're done, it's going to be about half that, because a lot of the moisture cooks off and then you get a nice, thick, rich sauce. And it only took 4 ingredients. So there's that. We're going to let that simmer. I turned my pan on for my zoodles because what I also typically do is saute my zoodles. So I'm going to put a little olive oil in that pan. I actually already had some prepped up, so I'm going to grab those out of the fridge and add my new zoodles to it and get those into the pan. And again, you're just going to want to add a little bit of garlic. And this pan might not be quite hot yet, but I'm living dangerously here. We'll just get that nice and sauteed. And I'm just going to add some of my zoodles right in so I can show another vegetable opportunity to add to your sauce. And they are really nice. I mean, they're these beautiful long strands. And they stay like that even after you're done cooking. You can also cut some up. So we'll let that get nice and hot. And then the great thing is all these vegetables can normally be found in our local farms. And we have 3 beautiful farms right here in Northborough. And in the summertime, there's nothing better than a farm-picked anything but zucchini. And then in the fall, we also have a lot of squash around the area. And sometimes they come in so quickly, you almost run out of things to do with it. Well, another way to utilize your Sunday sauce is using spaghetti squash. And the great thing about spaghetti squash is, again, when you're done with it, it actually looks like spaghetti. Let me put this over here. You can already hear our zoodles cooking up. The only tricky thing with spaghetti squash is it can be a little hard to get into. So you just want to be really careful cutting into your squash. I usually try to take the top off so I have a level surface to put my squash down on. And then just like many other squashes, the inside is hollowed out. So I just put my knife down the middle, get a nice chop, and I do the same on the other. And there you go. The squash will open up. just need to grab a spoon, or I'll grab my tongs. And you can just clean out the middle. And these aren't like pumpkin seeds. I wouldn't roast these. You just scrape, scrape, scrape. And you'll just dump that out. And this is another vegetable. You can put it straight in the oven like this, or you can put a little garlic. If you want to put a spicier seasoning on it, you could get a seasoning blend. If you're watching your sodium intake, get a no salt blend that you can put on it. Food is all about what you want it to be. These are just the raw ingredients, and the choices that you make it what you want. I tend to go salt, pepper, and olive oil. That's like my standby. Okay, so we have that all cleaned up. I'm going to stir my noodles. Oh, they're getting nice and brown. And my sauce is warming up. I can hear the football in the background. My dad would have the football on. And then you just take a little salt and pepper right in top. And then I always line my pan with aluminum foil, just because it helps with cleanup. And I'm all about quick cleanup. I also always roast my spaghetti squash face down. Again, I'm all about creating depth of flavor and trying to get as much out of how I'm cooking it, not just the raw ingredient. And when you put this face down, it actually creates a beautiful caramelization of the squash. So when you're eating it, you not only get the benefits of vegetables, but it tastes really good. So I always roast mine, depends on the oven, but anywhere 400 to 415, and usually for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the size of the squash. So I'm going to get that in the oven. And by the magic of modern technology, I already had one made up. So no wait. And when it's done, let me stir those zoodles again, because they take very little time to cook up. And this is really, I mean, you get to see that really beautiful browning on the squash, if everyone can see that. We have some wonderful people here today from Whitney Place, which I'm really appreciative of seeing their faces. So then you just take this and scrape it out. Whew, it's hot. I hope you can see that. It literally looks like spaghetti. So I'm going to put that on a plate. And this is also great if you have children that might be a little finicky with vegetables. If you can hide it in some beautiful sauce and maybe some cheese, you could be getting some great vegetables for your kids and your grandkids when they're coming over for a meal. So there's a beautiful plate of spaghetti, not spaghetti, or if you have an allergy to wheat, it's also another good opportunity to try something different, but you can still celebrate with everyone else that's eating. I'm going to go get those zoodles out of the pan because they're ready. There we go. Actually, these look great. I know what I'm having. I don't know what you guys are having. Just kidding. And after my Sunday sauce has been cooking, sometimes I leave it on literally for 2 hours if I have the time or if I'm in the kitchen for a long time. I love mason jars. They just make me feel like I did something productive with my day when my mason jars are full. You just take your sauce out. It smells so good. You just pour that right over top of either one and top it the way you'd like. So if you want to add crushed red pepper, if you have someone in your house that's a real spice freak, you put that crushed red pepper on that and some grated cheese and it'll challenge any spaghetti and meatballs. So you basically just made 2 options for your Sunday sauce without any grains. It's all vegetable based, it's super tasty, and you did it all from the comfort of your home. And it's a way of just really utilizing local, fresh produce that's in our area, and also eating food that makes you feel good. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm ready to eat. So thank you so much for being here.